Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Influencer Marketing, what it is and how to run a successful campaign. We're particularly excited about this webinar today. We've got a very special guest, digital strategist, brand, and influencer, Shane Barker, with us today. And without further ado, I think I'm going to pass it off to you, Shane, so you can tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of jump in and let us know what you're going to be talking about today.
All right, sounds good. Hey, thank you so much for the opportunity. So, as we touched on it, this is Shane Barker. I'm a digital strategist and brand and influencer consultant. I've been in the space for about probably 6 or 7 years now. Started off with a fitness client, way back in the day, and brought her from 400,000 to 1.6 million, all through influencer marketing. So, real vice on the really familiar with the subject. Been doing it for a long time. Once again, right for a lot of different things, and I'm going to kind of go through that when we go through the webinar. So. Once again, Shane Barker, I have a consulting firm. Once again, Shane Barker Consulting, and I'm founder of a company called Content Solutions, where we create content for websites and do brand mentions and all that fun stuff. So, but today we're going to be talking about influencer marketing, what it is, and how to run a successful campaign. And once again, thanks to Green Rope for getting us started and putting this together for us today. So, wanted to kind of touch on the agendas for today, like who is Shane Barker? That's myself, obviously. Influencer marketing, how it all started, and then what is influencer marketing? And then how to run a successful influencer marketing campaign. There's a lot of stuff in the media, good stuff and bad stuff, and people are saying, hey, influencer marketing doesn't work. And I absolutely agree with that. If you don't do it the correct way, then it is not going to work. It's no different than SEO or PPC or anything like that. If you do an SEO campaign and you don't know what you're doing in regards to SEO, then it's probably not going to be successful. Same thing with the PPC campaign. You go and you run all kinds of ads and you have the wrong target audience, or you have the wrong lookalike audience, or you have the wrong audience in general, then the campaigns aren't going to be successful. So I have these types of webinars because I really like to educate people on influencer marketing and to kind of give my expertise over the last, like I said, 6 or 7 years, and show you how what we've learned through the last 6 or 7 years, so it'll help streamline your guys' process so you guys will have a successful influencer marketing campaign. So who is Shane Barker? We've already talked about my day job here. As I'm a digital marketing consultant who specializes in influencer marketing, product launches, sales funnels, targeted traffic, and website conversions. I've worked with Fortune 500 companies, all the way down to mom and pop companies. I've worked with influencers with digital products. Is one place that we specialize, and I've worked with a number of A-list celebrities when I was doing a heavy PR stuff back in the day. And then my night job is I'm actually an instructor at UCLA. I teach a class called personal branding with influencer marketing. There's 2 sides to it. It's a 1 quarter course, but one of the side is how to be an influencer, and the other side is how to work with influencers. So, like I said, I've been honored to have that class, be that one of the first classes in the nation in a top 20 university. So excited about that. So myself, just kind of talk a little bit about where I've been mentioned, so we can kind of lay a little foundation. I've New York Post, Forbes, Mexico, USA Today, Entrepreneur, Vice, ABC News. Featured a lot of places in regards to, where they interview me about either content marketing or influencer marketing. And then all those people found me through those interviews because I write for Inc. and Forbes and Huffington Post and Social Media Examiner and Social Media. And anyways, there's 100 plus websites that I write for, and that's kind of how I built my and that's how UCLA found me, is because of my thought leadership position that I had in regards to influencer marketing. So one of my proudest moments is being named one of the top 100 influential people in influencer marketing. You might recognize some of these people. Kim Kardashian, if you don't know who she is, you should probably hang up now. She might be the queen of influencer marketing, started a long time ago. Gary Vee, obviously real popular, Richard Edelman, and then myself. So once again, I'm super honored to be featured in that group. So let's see, let's talk about influencer marketing and how it all got started. So if you think about this, and some of you might be too young to know what Tupperware is, and if so, ask your parents when we get off this webinar. But influencer marketing started really even before this, but a good example is in the 1950s. So in the 50s, you had a Tupperware party as an example. So you have Helen, as you can see Helen there. She's obviously handing out probably some kind of mommy juice to the whole group there through her Tupperware. And the thing is everybody in the audience knows Helen. She's mom of the year. She's wife of the year. She actually has influence over her community. And what I mean by that is you see how many people that she invited in her community, and these are how many people are at this actual event. So this is going to be a more in-person type thing. And what she does is she pitches Tupperware, kind of shows the how do you use it, use case, how they use it, and then she gets a percentage of all sales. So this was, back in the day, this was really influencer marketing. She's influencing this group on to buy certain types of products. In this situation, Tupperware. Now these days, there's all kinds of products that they sell, like this Amway and some other stuff like that. Now, influencer marketing in 2008, you guys might have heard Beats by Dre. So Beats by Dre was really one of the ones that took it really, really big when it came to influencer marketing. And what they were looking at, it wasn't even called influencer marketing. Mainly what they were doing is partnerships with athletes, singers, and actors. So you can see in the bottom campaign, we have Serena Williams, we have LeBron James, and there's a lot of, Cam Newton. So this one's Be Heard. And so obviously, and you'll see this a lot with the athletes. You would see them on the actual field wearing these headphones. So Beats by Dre had different campaigns, but they actually would hand out their product for free, and people would use them. And then obviously, they're getting publicity through, ESPN or anybody that's interviewing them. They have the Beats by Dre, or they're coming off the bus and they have the Beats by Dre on. So there was, like I said, if you look at that, that was one of the original ones that really made it big, starting in 2008. Lady Gaga, Nicki Minaj, some of the other, David Guetta, some other people that you can see in here. So we had Tupperware in 2017. Just wanted to give you, actually, it should be 2018. But what it is right now they're at 2.2 billion worth of sales, and they have 3.2 million consultants. And in these types of situations, they usually, when it comes to these types of products, they encourage you to go find friends and family to buy them, right? That's the first level, because you have some kind of influence over them. So that's how they encourage people to go and do that. So that's a kind of not always an MLM type thing, but usually that's what it is. They bring in the people, your sphere of people you have influence over, and bring them in, and they'll start the products, and then you can make money off them, and blah, 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 all the fun stuff, right? So Beats by Dre sold to Apple for $3 billion. Not too bad last time I checked, $3 billion. I think that would be enough to pay for the groceries for another few years. That was in 2014, and then obviously Dre and Jimmy Iovine are under the Apple umbrella and working on stuff to improve those. So once again, two good examples of influencer marketing. Now these are obviously the juggernauts in the industry, right? So these are big ones. We can't expect to be a local soap shop that's going to sell for $3 billion. Maybe you can. But the idea is I want to give you enough information on how to have a successful campaign. So we'll go through some of that today. One of the things that we realized is that the perfect formula is really a brand plus influencers, and then your brand, or the influencers actually talking about your brand, right? So there's a number of different ways to put these projects or put these campaigns together. And I'm going to go through some of these as we go. So influencer marketing trends in 2017, we saw 100% increase in Google searches for influencer marketing. That just shows that there's obviously a lot of people that are looking into it, because it's been a really, really hot term in the industry. And once again, we're in that space, and we're trying to index for a lot of those keywords, because it's never growing space. Influencer marketing trends. So we're seeing at least 1.6 billion projected to be spent on influencer marketing in 2018. And they're saying up to $5 to $10 billion by 2020. So it's not going anywhere. I think the thing we have to realize is that if you don't do your campaign correctly, then obviously it's not going to be successful, right? So that's one of the things where this education side of things comes in as we kind of go through this. So the search term influencer, or Instagram influencer, has seen a huge increase from between 2016 and 2017. So once again, when it comes to influencers, there's been a huge increase in traffic and the amount of people that are looking for that. The power of Instagram, I'm going to kind of talk about that a little bit, because in influencer marketing, there's a number of platforms that we could talk about. I'm going to talk about Instagram being the main one today. I mean, there's Twitter, there's Facebook, there's Snapchat, there's YouTube. Some are really great, just depends on your product and your service, and some of them aren't, right? So each one has its own little thing. We only have about 45 minutes today to go over this, so we're really going to kind of hone in on Instagram. So over 1 billion monthly active users. There's 25 million businesses are on Instagram. 59% of internet users under 30 are on Instagram, and about 53 minutes are spent on Instagram per day on average. So once again, it's a highly engaged audience that wants to see what kind of content is being produced there. So let's talk about what is influencer marketing, right? So we talk about this as a subject, but I want to kind of give you guys a definition. So influencer marketing is the process of promoting brands, products, and or services through influential individuals such as bloggers, journalists, industry experts, and celebrities. So the idea is this, today you don't necessarily have to have 100,000 or 1 million followers to be influential. In fact, it's probably better. A lot of the times we see that if you have a smaller engaged audience, that it can be better than if you have 1 million or 2 million or 5 million. Just depends on what the brand's looking for. So that's something we'll go into. So Who are potential influencers? Once again, we talk about bloggers, right? So that's going to be more online-based. Journalists obviously have influence over, if they're on TV or radio or something like that. Industry experts, so if you're a thought leader in your space, right? So social media influencers, which are going to be anybody that has, once again, doesn't have to be a crazy social media, doesn't have to be a crazy following, but has a good engaged audience. And then celebrities being another example of that. So types of influencers, we've used these names for a number of years. Some of this is going to change in regards to this, and I'll explain why that is. But just for today, so we can understand when I talk about, when I say a certain name, how many followers on average they have. Once again, it doesn't have to be that exact match, but micro-influencers are going to be 1,000 to 100,000. Once again, that could be 100 to 80,000. It really depends. Don't focus so much on how many of the followers they have, and that's where a lot of brands do. And that's where we've jumped into this thing of fake followers, because brands in the past have always, and they're still continuing to do it, to pay influencers because of their following count, because of the amount of money that is an influencer market and the potential is to be made, they get fake followers. So one of the things even though we use these numbers and you can look at this, don't use this as an indicator of how much you should pay somebody. And we'll go into that a little further in the presentation. So micro influencers, 1K to 100K, macro influencers, 100K to a million, and then mega influencers, 1 million plus followers, and sometimes a lot of times celebrities are in that as well, because they're influential, obviously, and because they do movies and all the other fun stuff. So examples of mega influencers, right? So this is 1 million plus. Kim K obviously being an example of this. They have immense reach, right? So she's, in this one, this was 116,000, and she has more now. Lower relevance, and what I mean by that is, she promotes a lot of different products. So the thing is she specializes obviously on her makeup line that makes a lot of money, and she specializes on her products. But the problem is if you're pitching 10, 15, 20, 30 products in a year, then your relevance, because your audience is so big, you start to lose some of that authenticity. And we'll go into that a little deeper. Generic promote a variety of brands that we just talked about. Lower trust factor, because if you're watching her and she's promoting 2 products in one day and she's going, oh my God, this is the best product ever, you start to think, is that really the best product ever, or is somebody paying her to say that? So we lose some of that trust factor, we lose some authenticity there, and really there's the potential of less conversions, because once again she talks about 10 products in a week. You have to really question how many of those people are really going to convert. If you're just looking for eyeballs, then she would be a good option because of the amount of followers she has. So you really have to look at that as a brand or as a company, like would she be a good influencer for you? And I think she charges, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of dollars these days for one post. And frequency is going to be another thing we'll talk about. Just putting up one post on Kim K's thing doesn't mean that you're going to make $1 million. So it's something to think about. Macro influencers. So this is an influencer. She's got about 641,000. It's Ola Novak. She's more trustworthy than celebrities because she's in the kind of that middle area, and larger following and ensures greater reach, right? Conversions are lower than a micro influencer. So micro influencer is what we're going to go to in a second, but they have lower conversions because once again, you have 641,000 people. If the engagement rate is going to be a lot lower, and I'll go into that when we talk about micro influencers. They're less relevant, and their engagement rates are lower. Like I said, they're lower than they would be for a micro influencer. So here goes a micro influencer. This is somebody that, once again, don't focus too much on the numbers, but just so we get a good example of 1K to 100K followers. This is Nikki, and Nikki has a massive engagement rate, higher conversion rates, and highly relevant and immensely trustworthy. So if you look at her, so her big thing is going to be, she's a great story. First of all, she had a brain tumor, brain surgery, and now she's chasing her dreams of traveling, right? But she's obviously heavy on the fitness side, heavy on like the bikini and outdoor wear and stuff like that. So that's where it makes sense to, if you're that kind of a brand, where she could make total sense, right? Where if you give Kim a swimsuit that can cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars and she just posts about it once, or if she's posts about bikinis, 10 times that month, then you're going to have less likelihood that people are going to buy stuff, or at least a chance of breaking even, right? Because if you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, how many bikinis do you need to sell to do that? So I'm not saying don't work with big influencers. I'm just saying when they have a smaller following, like Nikki's here, she has 56,000. The cool part about that is when people are responding to her, like, oh my God, where did you get that? Or, oh my God, where is that? Where are you located? Or this, that, and the other. She should be responding to those people because that helps your engagement rate, right? Kim K can't do that. She has 160, 150, whatever the number is, million followers. She would be on there, right? She sent a post on there. She gets thousands of comments. The problem is, as a brand, you have to look at those comments and see if that aligns with your brand, right? If it doesn't, if it's just people saying rude stuff, then that's not really the type of engagement you're going to want for your brand, that type of partnership. So always look at, we have softwares and stuff that will help us with all this. You really want to dig down and look at the influencer and look at their content and see what kind of content they're producing, because that's who's going to represent you and your brand. So how to collaborate with influencers. So there's a number of different ways this can happen. Guest blogging being one of them, sponsored posts, gifting, which is what Beats by Dre did, created an affiliate program, right? So now you give them an affiliate link and they promote your products. Collaborate on an event, so you have an event, you have a grand opening, you have a launch, you have whatever that is. And then also social media profile takeovers. Now, there's a lot more of other ways you can work with influencers, but these are some of the ones that are some more popular ones. I've obviously written about it a lot on my website, shanebarker.com. You can go there and take a look if you want other ideas on how to work with influencers. The ideal influencer has a higher engagement rate, right? Because engagement is going to be really important. And when I say engagement, I don't mean 5,000 emojis, right? That's not engagement. Like if somebody walks into a store and I'm the clerk, I'm the salesperson, and somebody says, hey, do you have blue shirts? And I just smile. That's not engagement, right? I have to say, oh, what kind of shirt are you looking for? What size are you on? Blah, blah, ask some questions. That's engagement. That's having a conversation. So if you're looking at an influencer and they have 5,000 people that are engaging them, they're all emojis, or they just says cool, or it just says great, or we really like that, and it doesn't really fit, then you have to start to question either the audience, or does the influencer have something funny going on with their following? Are they an authentic storyteller? Storytelling is a big thing on Instagram, right? It's about tying that product in somebody's life and making sure those things tie in. If you don't do that, if you start taking on products that aren't going to be good, then your audience is going to call you out on that. So you have to be real careful of that. And then is it active in the niche, relevant to your product? And it has to be a good fit for your brand. If you're out there, having these influencers pitch and they don't have the right following and it's not a good fit, it's not going to work. And then make sure they're not overly promoting. If you reach out to an influencer and they're promoting three things a day, 3 brands a day, you start to lose, the follower starts to go, you know what, this just starts to feel kind of dirty, like, they're just trying to sell stuff to me. So it just, a lot of the times they'll lose their following because of that. So how to run a successful influencer marketing campaign. This is kind of what we're talking about today. Ingredients of a successful marketing campaign is know your audience, know your goals. We're going to talk about that, KPIs. Selecting the right influencers. Once again, you got the best product in the world, but if you don't pick the right influencers, it's not going to work. Customizing your approach, and then tracking and measuring your results. So one of the biggest influencer marketing challenges these days is measuring ROI, right? Like, how do I know that for X amount of money I'm spending, I'm getting X amount of money back? And so one of the ways that you're going to be able to figure that out is to figure out what your goals are, right? And you need to know these ahead of time. Because if you don't know what your goals are and the influencer don't know what the goals are, how do you know when you get there? I mean, that's like running a race and not being a finish line, right? It's like, I know my goal is to run 26.2 miles. That's what my goal is. I know once I get there, I'm done and that I've succeeded. If you don't set those things up ahead of time, then you'll never know if you succeed or not. So here we go. Why is it important to set up goals? Like, no goals are equals no KPIs. KPIs are key performance indicators. So if you have no KPIs, right, you have no way to measure your ROI. Right, so it all comes back to goals. No measurement of your ROI means it's insufficient use of your budget and resources, and then insufficient use of budget and resources equals a failed campaign. So it really comes back to, hey, what are your goals as a brand? Like, what do you want to do here? You have to be realistic about those goals. I'll talk to brands. I have some qualifying questions that I send to brands or agencies that want to work with me. And one of the things is they're saying, hey, we just want to find one influencer, we want to post once, we want to spend $1,000, but we want $100,000 in sales. That's not realistic, right? So what we have to look at is what is realistic when it comes to this. And we read these articles, and I've written some about my clients, hey, for every dollar you spend, you make $4. But you have to realize that's probably not just from one picture going up. It's a frequency thing. So we'll talk about that a little further on. Goal setting helps to answer the questions like, did my influencer campaign work? That's always the big question. Should we try a different type of influencer, right? Or a different type of platform? Is it, hey, we did some stuff on Instagram, we did with 10 influencers, and went okay. Maybe YouTube's where we should do this because we have more of like a demonstration type product, right, or service. What about a different medium? Kind of touched on that already. Do you need to change up the content? So, we said one of the things you need to do is make sure you give influencers a brief. And what a brief is going to do, a brief is going to say, hey, this is what we're agreeing. You're going to do 5 posts. You're going to put them up at this time. You're going to use this hashtag. You can't work with any other makeup companies for at least 1 month after this campaign. This is content that we've seen that's worked in the past, but we really want you to have creative control over it, come up with some great stuff. It's just a little bit of an outline. You don't want to control the influencer in the sense of telling them exactly what needs to be done, but you definitely want to, make sure you guys have some kind of a brief in place so you guys know what needs to be done for the rest of the campaign. So the characteristics of every goal, this is something that we teach at UCLA, it's called a SMART goal, which is specific, measurable, achievable, results-oriented, and time-bound, right? So you have to be very specific on your goal. It has to be measurable, actionable, right? So what do we need to do to be able to achieve it? Results-oriented, and then time-bound. So you always have to have a timeline, right? So if we talked about running a marathon, right, at 26.2 miles, but if I just say, hey, what I want to do is I want to run that with under 2 hours. That's my goal, right? That's time-bound. Now I know exactly what's the timeline when I need to get it done by. So example or sort of influencer marketing goals examples, like to boost brand awareness can be something that we look at in regards to goals, generate sales or conversions, tap into a new market or a new target market. We can grow social media followers. We can use influencers as testimonials and social proof. There's a lot of ways that you want to put this together. One thing I would recommend, on our contracts is that we always say that we also make it so that we can use that content in other places. So if I have somebody that puts something on Instagram that we say, hey, we can grab that and actually put that on our website, or we can go and put that content someplace else, or we can use a company that can go and do PPC to it, or we have a company called Lumana that we work with, so that it'll extend out that campaign so it's not just a one-time deal. We're going to continue to put ad dollars at it to get that exposure there. So make sure you negotiate that in your contracts. Most popular influencer marketing KPIs. So engagement obviously being a big one to take a look at. Reach is important. Impressions, followers, referral traffic. And referral traffic, the best way to find out about that, to really look into that, is more like an affiliate type relationship where somebody has a link that's an exclusive link to them, and then you as a brand or a service say, hey, everybody that clicks on that link will go and you'll get X% of whatever sales that happen there. One thing to remember, just because you go and put up, an influencer puts up one post with an referral or with an affiliate link, doesn't mean that millions of dollars is going to come in. It's a frequency deal. It's not, when you drive by a sign that says Coca-Cola on it, that doesn't mean that you run and go buy a Coca-Cola instantly, right? You have to see it 5, 6, 7 times, then all of a sudden you're at the grocery store with your wife or your husband. For some reason I feel like a Coca-Cola. It's the same thing with this. Don't expect just because you do one small campaign that it's gonna go through the roof. It's like anything else. SEO or PPC. You do PPC, just because you do one PPC campaign doesn't mean it's going to be successful. I mean, this is one tool in the whole toolbox of marketing. It can be highly successful and it can be very prosperous if done correctly. But once again, you got to have the right steps in place. And sales and conversions can be a big one as well. Once again, be realistic about what you're looking for in regards to sales out of working with influencers. So how do you identify your target audience? Like, who are your users, right? So you have to know that, right? Who's my buyer persona? And then who will benefit from your product, right? So what is their pain points, right? So we have, hey, I have a skincare product that is great for people that have fair skin. And so what I would want to do is go after an influencer that maybe talks about skincare and the fact that she has fair skin, and these are the products that she uses. That's a good product fit, right? For somebody that's what you have to take a look at. Like, does it make sense for this influencer to talk about your product? What age groups, locations, and genders do they belong to? So, if you have a yoga studio in LA, it probably doesn't make sense to get a yogi that's mainly in New York. And we have software so you can take a look at. If they have 80-90% of their people out of New York and you're trying to drive people to your brick and mortar location, then it doesn't make sense to work with that influencer, even though they can have a great following or give you great pricing. Those are things you have to take a look at. And so once again, if it's location-based, that's another beast, but there's ways you can do that through software. And once again, if it's gender, if you have something that's just mainly for women or for men, obviously take a look at that with analytics and the influencers. One of the big things that you really have to realize is, as I've touched on, if you don't have the right influencer, you're not going to sell your products. And doing that research into the right influencer is really, really key in this whole thing. And then which social media channels do they use often? It's hard these days if you have, and I know myself, that if you have 5, 6, 7, 10 different profiles to be able to put original content, great content on all of those, it becomes a challenge. But you have to figure out, hey, where we want to spend our time is Instagram or YouTube or Snapchat or whatever that may be, and then we have to go and take a look and say, okay, what do we think is going to be a good relationship with that influencer. Like, hey, we want to do 5 posts on Instagram, 2 live stories, and then we want to do 2 videos on YouTube, and what would that cost us, right? So that's the frequency deal, not just a one-time post. So how to find the right influencers? We have a number of companies we work with, Grins being obviously one of our favorite ones to find influencers and to run and track the campaigns. BuzzSumo's awesome for looking for trending content ideas, and then they also have a influencer search engine on there as well. So you can find people that are engaging with content. This is more on the blogging side of things. Group Pie's been awesome. Andy and those guys over there, they've got you can find bloggers on there. So if you want to find food bloggers, they've got a great search engine, been around for a number of years. You can also find influencers on there as well and do outreach. And then Insight Pool, which just got purchased a little while ago, is also another great tool that we've used over the years in regards to finding the right influencers. Most of these are all, I think all of these are paid programs. There are some free programs out there if you just want to kind of get your feet wet, but the key here is you want to make sure they have good data, right? If they don't have good data and they're just scraping stuff, then you're not getting good data. That's a problem, right? So I would rather pay a website or pay a software that I know that I'm going to be getting good data from, other than a company that's potentially free and maybe not getting the data. So how do you pitch influencers? So this is one of the big ones. Like, how do you need to get to know your influencer, right? So they're posting everything about their life on their feed. So if it's on Instagram, you really could look at their last 50 pictures and get an idea of what's happened in their life over the last 50 days, or let's say 70 days, or whatever that is. Take a look at it. If they just had a brand new baby, or if they just got married, or they had a death in their family, there's something going on. Like, look at that and tie that into your pitch and when talking with them, because the idea is to find the right influencer, right? We can use a software and I can send out 10,000 emails to 10,000 influencers and just see who comes back to me. But the problem with this, that's a shotgun effect, right? That's one way to cut down on them, but are you really getting the right influencer? Discover common interests and synergies. So once again, hey, I see that you did this. I see that you're a big yogi here in the Los Angeles area. And you know what? We have this new yoga product or service that we're coming out with. We were wondering if you want to talk about some synergies and maybe working together. Follow and engage with their content regularly. So if they're not getting 100,000 likes and that on a daily basis, then I would like and engage their content and let them know that once they start seeing you, then they're going to be more apt to work with you. And once again, I think that's where a lot of people miss out on this. And don't pitch them until you've done these things, right? Until you've done some of that research. If you're just looking to get any influencer, hey, send out 10,000 emails. If you're looking to get the right one, do the research and spend the time on that. I mean, I don't know if you guys know this, but 41% of influencers receive 5 to 15 unique pitches every week. So I will tell you myself as, I guess I could say I'm an influencer in regards to the influencer industry. I get probably 5 to 10 emails a day on people who want me to review their software, take a look at their influencer campaign, want to know how to be an influencer, want me to include them in my blog post. I mean, it happens a lot. But so you have to realize that. So you have to be unique in your approach. And one of the ways to do that is you have to do the perfect pitch. You have to do a catchy subject line, right? So you want to, in the subject line, you want somebody to click on. That's the first thing we see when we look at our phones, right? We look on there and we go, and if it's something that's catchy, I click on it. If it's not catchy, I probably don't, right? Look to build a long-term relationship and personalize your message. So we have templates that we use. And 70% of it is like kind of templated stuff, right? Like the terms of the brief and like what we're looking for. But 30% of it should be customization, right? It doesn't have to be exactly 30, but we're looking for, once again, you should go look into that influencer and understand this pitch should have something to personalize it for them to show that there's a reason why you picked them, right? That this wasn't 10,000 emails that went out that said, hey, John, and then went into this pitch that is not specific enough. So how do you create epic content? So, a lot of the times brands want to control this side of it. I mean, if you're hiring an influencer because you love their content, why do you want to control this side, right? The idea is you give them a brief so that they have an idea of what they need to do. Let them create the content. Not to say you can't give some creative insight, but you don't need to control it. You really don't. I mean, I know companies that go and hire content creators or influencers just because they know they're going to produce great content, and they'll use those content for campaigns, which is a great idea as well. So communicate your goals. Provide your campaign briefs, basic guidelines. Once again, this is what we're looking for, but you can, we're looking for you to be creative and what you think is going to be best for our brand or service. And then provide creative freedom, as we already kind of talked about. So how do you run and you manage your campaigns, like tracking your campaign goals? So There's a lot of ways to do this. Awareness, engagement, and sales being the things we kind of talked about a little bit. We use Grin, Insightful, and NeoReach is another great one that we've had good successes with. These are the things that you have to take a look at. Once again, you have to set up those goals ahead of time so you know exactly what you're going to be looking at, right? And be realistic with those goals as well. So some of my key takeaways for the webinar today is make sure you have clear goals. I've said that quite a few times. Finding the right influencers. Once again, spend the time using these softwares, go through, look to see if you make a list of 15, 20, 30, you can do certain tags in there. You can grab that list, but then you need to go look at their content. You really need to spend some time and make sure they're the right influencer. Look at, once again, they're just getting tons of emojis, they're getting weird comments, all that kind of stuff. Maybe it's not a good brand fit for you. So, but you have to go and do this research. It's pertinent. Software is great to hone down your search, but you want to make sure that, once again, that you're able to go in there and take a look at those influencers and really be able to evaluate them, and then you evaluate them and see what you think. And usually we have a team that goes and we'll take a look at the influencers, and once we have our list of 10 or 20, 30, 50 people, we go through and we rate them. And there's a number of things, of factors that we look at, what would make an influencer right or not right for a brand or a service. Negotiate a win-win proposal. Most of these things should be, something where both people win. If you're going to go to Kim Kardashian, as an example, and you say, hey, we want to give you a free $10 t-shirt, that might be super, you might think that's super awesome because you're giving her a free $10 t-shirt, but it's Kim K, so she doesn't care about your $10 t-shirt, right? She's looking at hundreds of thousands, and that's kind of it's an over-the-top example, but you get my point. So if you don't have a huge budget, like you don't have thousands and thousands of dollars to influencer marketing, figure out how it's a win-win, right? Figure out that angle for somebody and say, listen, I'm a yoga, where we have this yoga product. You're a yogi, and it doesn't look like you really promote any type of yoga mats. This one is a patented yoga mat that we have, and what we'd like to do is we'd like to offer you 25% of all sales. And then I would also like to tell you what we've done on our side to market our product, but I think would also be good, could work for you. So will we be able to get together and kind of talk this out? Because you're looking for a win-win, right? Most people are like, and I get them all day, hey, can you just go and add my link to your blog post, right? And I'm like, that's taken me 10, 15 hours to put together between the graphics and everything else, and you just want me just to include you in there? Now, if they said, hey, Shane, I was wondering if maybe you could mention my product in a thing, I want to give you free access for 1 year, and then you can take a look at it. And if you like the product, then it's something that you can recommend. We would be honored if you included it, and if not, that's totally fine too. Now I look at it and go, okay, this is kind of a win-win. They give you free access to their software, and if I like the software, then I'll talk about it in a blog post. So that's a more of a win-win relationship. Building relationships, think long-term. We test influencers. Of 9 out of 10 influencers don't work, 1 does. Great, now we know where to put our budget, and then we go and try some more influencers and go look at their audience and say, okay, like if this audience really worked for this influencer, we need to find influencers that are going to be similar, that have a similar type audience. And then lastly, obviously, tracking and measuring ROI is going to be a big one. Obviously, it's going to be the main one that we're looking at. But you have to figure out what that means. What does ROI mean to you? So I figured this is where we'll get into and ask any questions that we've got. And then here goes my information too, so you guys can see. So if you need to reach out to me directly, Shane at Shane Barker. And then also I have an influencer book that I wrote about 2 years ago. It still has some great information in it. You guys can go. It's shanebarker.com/influencer-ebook, or you can look up influencer ebook in Google, and I'll be #1 for that search. So cool. I think probably now is that time where we'll talk about any questions or anything like that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shane. That was really awesome. I think a lot of people are in that space right now where we kind of know what influencer engagement is, and we're trying to figure out how we can leverage that strategy for our own marketing. And so we do have our first question. And the first question is from Jenny, and she asks, is influencer marketing for every industry? So what about real estate development? And then just so everybody knows as well, you can type your questions into the questions box in the GoToMeeting panel, and we'll make sure to get all of those answered.
So I think when you talk about real estate development, let me first answer the question. I don't think influencer marketing is for every client, right, or for every brand or service, right? So there's some stuff, like if you talk about, I've had people in the past where I was like the #2 New York Life guy. It was huge in the insurance industry. Problem with it is it's so heavily regulated, And anytime we wanted to put content up, it went through like 3 attorneys. So it's like, I want to talk about something or have this person talk about something that's current, and it's very difficult to do because there's so much regulation. Those ones are a lot more difficult. I'm not saying they're impossible, but those industries are more difficult. If you're a real estate developer, I mean, you just have to figure out the angle. You figure out, okay, who would you want? What influencer would you want that would have obviously some kind of, maybe it's somebody that is an entrepreneur, somebody that is a jet setter, somebody that buys a lot of real estate currently, right? And then their audiences are probably going to be people look at what their audience is saying. So, hey, I'm over here in North Carolina. Well, North Carolina is being hit with a hurricane right now, so it might not be, not meant to be the best example. But anyways, let's say it is North Carolina, and somebody's going to buy some property, and people are going, oh, how much for the property? I have to asking those types of questions. Then that's somebody you would want to probably take a look at. You just have to look at their audience, their engagement, and see who's talking about what. But being a real estate developer can be very interesting. It just depends on if you're looking for a local person. So you have a local influencer, you have a local boxer, you have a local, I don't know, somebody that's in the UFC, somebody like that. You have to figure out, like, hey, would this be a good partner for me? And in real estate development, I'm assuming that you're looking for somebody that wants to invest. So if you're doing that, then maybe what you're doing, the influencers you want to talk with is going to be local real estate agents, having them over there and taking a look at the facility. Maybe they do a live, Instagram stories or something like that. Or you're maybe taking them to lunch and kind of going over some of the things, and that the real estate influencer takes a picture of everything and says, wow, we're really excited about this development that's happening at XYZ. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. It doesn't have to be Kim Kardashian. It doesn't have to be somebody that's that famous. Anybody who has influence over their following, which could be a real estate agent that puts out great content. So maybe that's somebody that you would want to have, once again, either at the location or invite them to lunch or show them, whatever the engineering plans or what you guys got planned or whatever that is. That builds buzz. It's no different than doing PR and stuff like that and getting that out. But you can't expect for that to be, that's what you have to figure out. It's like, what are your KPIs with that? You're obviously, maybe it is investors that reach out, right? And now you just have to figure out what your goals are on that. So let me see. I don't know if I see any other questions here.
Oh, sorry, I muted myself. So you kind of touched on this, but to kind of dive a little bit further, do you think influencer marketing works if you're trying to sell, promote a service versus an actual physical product?
I mean, it absolutely can. Service is a little different, obviously, because with the product, you can obviously physically see the product. But with services, you absolutely can. It really depends on what your service is, right, and how you're going about that. But like, I'll give you an example. Like, if I was a massage therapist, one of the things is if you have a downtime, you could say, hey, you're an influencer, you're XYZ. How would you like to come in for a free 30-minute massage? And I'd like to trade you out, for you to maybe put something about my company or talk about that. The one thing you have to think about too is that, on Instagram, that post will be there and it'll go down in the feed. If you have somebody on YouTube, YouTube is always out there. That content's always out there. Usually it's not deleted, right? So you just have to look at that, like, what is that angle? There's always an angle for everything. So you think about, who is my core audience, right? So my core audience is people that have been in injuries, right? So then maybe what you do is you go and you give a free hour massage to an injury attorney, right? Because if they talk about that, those are people their audience could be looking at you, right? Could be looking at that person talking about that. There's an angle for everything. You just have to figure out, once you figure out your audience and figure out that person that's in the middle of there that's gonna be able to get that introduction to their followers. And it can be, it's not just a one-time post thing. It should be a multiple post. You just have to look at your service and, once again, figure out who your buyer persona is. And once you figure that out, now you go look at the influencer and who you think has that same type of audience.
That's awesome. Yeah. And do you, kind of, I guess, on top of that, see any trends in influencer marketing between B2B or B2C companies?
Yeah, I think there's some really cool stuff happening with B2B, and obviously it's the same with B2C. I mean, B2C is obviously it's direct to consumer. So, there's usually kind of a bigger pot there. But B2B, I think, is really, there's quite a few people and agencies that have been doing some really, really cool things there. I think it's a little more difficult than B2C, once again, because it's business to business. But I'm seeing some really cool stuff. There's some case studies that we've put together that are going to be coming out here in the next few months. So you guys might want to stay tuned for the blog. And I want to get them out too early because we're still putting them together. But we've got some really cool stuff that's actually happening in the spaces.
Very cool. Next question is the only financial arrangement with influencers an upfront fee. Do any entertain PPC? I'm reading more and more about very disappointing results from influencer campaigns. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, once again, it really, this is a thing. Obviously, as a brand, you're like, hey, I don't want to have to pay, and the influencer's like, hey, I don't want to have to do anything for free. So what you have to realize that if you are an influencer and you're a brand and the brand is reaching out to the influencer, and if you love their content, it's the most epic content you've ever seen, you have to realize that it's probably not. 5 years ago, it was a picture with your iPhone, and I'm not saying people still don't do that, because that's still going to be great content. But if you love their content, you can tell that they've got a team behind them, and it's obviously going to cost them money to put that all together, right? It's not easy to be an influencer, even though people read these things and they're making millions of dollars in their jets with their chihuahuas with gold teeth, or whatever we see, right? Whatever we look at influencer marketing, what you have to look at is those people are spending a lot of time to be able to put that content together. And so that's where it has to be a win-win. If you say, hey, listen, this is what we're doing. I understand what you do. I understand how much time and effort you put into this. I've seen you post pictures of your 3-person content team that does video and does audio and does this for you. Here's what I'm proposing. And what do you usually ask for? Hey, they say it's $1,000 a thing. How about we do $500? But what I want to do is give you an affiliate link where the commissions are whatever it is. There's no cap on commissions. And what I'm going to do is I've actually come up with a program, and I can show you what's worked for other influencers in the past. I can show you what's going to work for you, and then we can kind of work that out. So that way it's a win-win, right? Because that's the problem with it is that a brand goes in and says, hey, we want you just for free, and an influencer goes, there's no way we're going to do that. I'm not going to do anything for free, and that communication's done, right? Because they get pitched like that all the time. It's like, hey, let me explain to you how this can be a win-win. I understand that it takes time to do your content and it costs money. So I'm understanding of that. So why don't we cover your costs by doing the $500, but then you have that unlimited income for the affiliate side of things, and I'll show you how to put those kind of plans together so that you can be successful. That's a win-win. That's how it makes sure that both sides should be happy. And then once you put a brief together so everybody's on the same terms of, hey, what we're going to do is we're going to try to do 5 posts. We're going to do 2 live stories and 1 YouTube. And if it doesn't take off after that, you don't make tons of commissions, then we can talk about that after that. But everything, once again, everything's negotiable, but it's all in how you present it, right? You have to understand, if you go in and just say, hey, I want you to do this for free, I'm going to give you a free $10 t-shirt. A lot of times as an influencer, they can take offense to that and say, my $10 t-shirts that I was getting for free was 5 years ago. I charge $1,000 now because I can't go give 1 t-shirt to 4 people on my team, right? So that's what you have to take a look at.
So in terms of pricing, and this may be kind of, have a really broad answer, but do you have any best practices or any recommendations of like, oh, wow, that's way too high of a price, or, oh, that's a really good deal, kind of gauging where you're at in terms of how to understand whether you're going to get a lot of value for a specific price, or, what might be too high of a price. Any best practices or insight there?
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to what do you think is fair? Well, I guess what both sides think is fair, right? So I'll give you an example, this analogy that I use. So let's say I have a Babe Ruth rookie card, right? So anybody that's collected baseball cards, that's a big deal, right? Or let's say it's even better, it's signed by Babe Ruth. Whew, that's a big one, right? So let's say there's only 10 of these in the world. So if I go to Jennifer and say, hey, this is a Babe Ruth signed baseball card, and it's worth $200,000. She goes, that's awesome. I wouldn't give you $1 for it. Okay, sounds good. You're not my right client, right? And you go on to the next one. Somebody else says, hey, I'd be willing to pay $50,000, and you've already asked 10,000 people, and nobody wants to pay your $250. And you're like, you know what? $50,000 feels like a fair deal, right? Then maybe that's something you go forward with. But the issue is with pricing is if somebody comes to you and they're asking for an astronomical amount, and if you can figure out how it can be a win-win, then you want to go and you want to kind of talk to them and try to figure that out, right? But the issue is it's if you feel like it's a good deal, but once again, you have to feel like it's a good deal by putting that brief together and understanding what you're going to be getting for that pricing. It's one of the biggest issues. An influencer says, hey, I'm going to post a picture. You go, great, that's awesome. I give them $1,000. They post 1 picture, and then it's done. And then we go, okay, nothing happened. Well, the problem is that you guys should have talked about a longer term deal. saying, hey, listen, I know that you're used to getting $1,000. This is what I'd be willing to do. Would you be willing to do 3 pictures for $1,500? Right? But I'd like to talk to you a little bit about strategy and really get this together, because I also have my team that's going to promote it, put some PPC, some a pay-per-click behind it, and once you figure out how it's a win-win. That's the biggest problem, is that if you just say you're going to give something for free, that's not always going to make influencers jump at that. And pricing is really whatever you think that it is. I mean, let's put it this way. If I am an influencer and I have a local mom and pop, let's say it's a Mexican food restaurant, which I love Mexican food, and they go, hey, Shane, would you come and take a few pictures of our food? We'll give you free dinner. Hey, not a problem. I'll do that. Hey, I was going to go over there and it's one of my favorite restaurants. Not a problem. Give me some gift cards. Life's good. Now, if I have Walmart that calls me up and says, hey, Shane, we were wondering if you wanted to come over to our food mart. That's a terrible example, but you get my point. Hey, you want to come over and take some pictures? That might be a different deal, right? Because I'm dealing with Walmart, right? And I'm not saying you should gouge Walmart and not gouge the local Mexican restaurant. Actually, I am going to say that. But, it really depends on who that is. Pricing can fluctuate, obviously, on the product and service, how you're pitching it, right? Those are the 2 biggest things. Is we're going, okay, what's in it for me, right? Because that's what everybody wants to know, what's in it for me. But when you make it a win-win, we go, hey, this is how it can be a win-win for both sides, right? So that makes more sense. It really just depends on when you catch an influencer. This is the deal. I've worked with thousands of influencers. If I work with an influencer and they, know my name, or they know who I am, and we get on a call, and if they act like a diva, or there's potential red flags, there's millions of influencers, literally millions of them. Some different follower size, all this kind of fun stuff. But my point is, if you get kind of a weird feeling, or you get somebody that's like, hey, we want top dollar and that's it, I won't work with anybody else unless you're giving me 10 grand, and you don't think that's fair, move on. You don't have to work with them. There's hundreds and thousands, there's millions of influencers. There's no reason to negotiate with them. This is the thing. If I'm dating and the girl comes to me and I go, hey, I'm really interested in I want to have 5 kids, and she goes, I don't want to have 5 kids. Are you going to try to push her into having 5 kids? No. You tell her, hey, rock on, congratulations, do your thing. Hopefully you meet somebody, and you go on to the other person. So that's what you have to realize, is just because you think you found the perfect influencer, if they are not a good fit for a good brand fit for you, or I call it my spider sense, like right away I kind of get this little sense of like, oh, this is something funny could happen here. There's money involved. There's, a lot of stuff going on. And if I don't like them, I'll move them. I mean, give me a reason to move you aside as an influencer. I will, because I'm looking for the right influencer, right? And so that's one of the things that we do. We have some classes that we're doing. I'm doing some online training and stuff, some courses that we're going to be doing for influencers on how to pitch brands correctly. And obviously we have a thing for brands to talk about how to be able to pitch influencers and negotiate contracts and really help educate the community on how to do it correctly.
That was really, I think, really helpful, because I think that's what a lot of people struggle with, especially these days. I've got a couple more questions for you. So this is an interesting question. Can companies be influencers, or is it really directed at the individual?
No, companies can absolutely be influencers. Just depends on what kind of content they're putting out there. So, I myself as an individual, in theory, are an influencer, right? But I guess my company, but it's still my company, Shane Barker. So maybe that's not the best example, but companies can absolutely be influencers. But you just have to figure out like what that means, like what the persona of that company, if there's actually a persona. So let's give you an example. Like Southwest is a great example, right? They have the people on social media, and well, I guess Carl's Jr. is probably even better, but Carl's Jr.'s, their people are a little snickety. Like on social media, they go back and forth and they'll like say stuff to Wendy's, and I think it's, or maybe it's Wendy's. Either way, it's one of them, and they're kind of funny, and they kind of like have their own little persona, and that's where that could make sense. It once again just depends on the company, and how you have to figure out how that's going to work for your product or service, right? By putting them in there, once again, who is their following? Does that make sense, right? To be able to do that, to be able to produce this type of content, and producing this kind of content, is it going to resonate with that company? And then is it going to resonate with their audience, right? So it doesn't always have to be individuals. Individuals are the examples that we see day to day, probably more often, but it can be with companies as well.
Awesome. Next question. What are some common mistakes when negotiating with an influencer?
Well, I mean, I think the common mistakes are realizing that everything's on the table, right? I mean, you have to realize that everybody in the negotiation situation, if you feel like you're getting something good and the influencer feels like they're getting something good, then that's great. But one of the things that I've seen is that not doing the frequency of posts, so not doing multiple things over and over. Like what I mean by that is frequency of like, so posting multiple times or multiple videos or multiple this, because that's the deal. Just because you talked about influencer marketing 6 years ago, I could post something once, somebody would see it, and then you can get a lot of people that would buy or get reach or followers or whatever that is. These days, it's a frequency deal. It really has. People see influencer marketing happening a lot. People promoting products, and that's why it needs to be a good fit with the influencer, because if it's not a good fit and they're like pushing this thing out and it just looks unauthentic and they just look like they're not really into it, it's not going to be a good fit. If you are pushing your thing is you're selling shotguns, and you go to a yoga instructor that's out of Los Angeles and you're like, hey, I think this is a great fit. And he goes, man, this is awesome. I love guns. And you go and you post that. I'm not saying people in yoga don't have guns, but just by labeling people, I just probably not the number one people that have shotguns in their trucks, right? I'm just being realistic. So that's where you have to look at that. Like that's not obviously going to work, right? So why go even try to figure that out? When you talk about contracts and negotiating those types of things, you just want to look at, I guess, all angles of it, right? Like, how does it make sense? And what's going to talk about this is how do you make it that win-win?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then our next question here is, can you give an example of how an influencer might approach working with a law firm? So pretty specific industry there.
Yeah, so a law firm, I'm trying to think of the angle as an influencer that would want to work with a law firm. So, I mean, what you can do is if you're an influencer and you have some kind of I'm assuming that you're saying that you want a law firm to pay you as an influencer. I'm assuming that's what you mean. So, I mean, in those situations, if I don't know as an influencer how you would get a law firm to pay you, because I guess what you could do is if you have a great audience. So let's say I'm a entrepreneur, and I have let's say 15,000 people that follow me, and they all want entrepreneur information. And I've sold courses and done this kind of stuff. I could go to an attorney firm and say, hey, I've been doing this for a long time. You have some kind of a media kit. I've been doing this for a long time. And what I'm looking to do is I'm actually looking to trade attorney firms, or I'm looking to replace my attorney firm. And what I'd like to do is come on and get some kind of a discounted rate, opposed to $3.50 an hour. I'd like $1.50 an hour. And every time I come here to talk about this stuff, I'm going to go ahead and post a picture of you guys. Hey, thank you, ABC, firm, on doing this for me, that, and the other. And I'm probably going to see at least twice a month. I'll come in, I'll get those pictures, get the product, or the product, but get the stuff together for you. We'll put it on there, and then we can take a look at the analytics. And so, I mean, that's one way that you could pitch an attorney firm. So they're like, hey, our $150 is at least covering our costs. And this influencer obviously has influence over entrepreneurs, assuming that you're a law firm that does like LLCs or does consulting or does startup structure or anything like that. That's how that could make sense. So it really just depends that angle. You just have to figure out. This is the thing. One of the things we teach in the course for influencers. Like, how do you go and pitch a brand? Like, you just have to think of that angle. Like, how are you going to get in front of them and not just send them an email and say, hey, I want to work with your attorney firm. You have to think of that example. And the example that I just gave you is it. Like, you're looking at, hey, I'm an entrepreneur. I have 15,000 followers. You'll see through my engagement, a lot of people ask me a lot of questions about how I put my company together, this kind of thing. And I would like to refer those clients to you guys. If you guys give me a discounted rate of $150, would you guys be open to a 15-minute conversation so we can talk about this and figure out a win-win situation? Boom, there you go.
Awesome. And Carol, let us know if that answers your question. And then we've got time for one more question here. So in terms of, I know we've spoken a lot about Instagram and, so a little bit about YouTube, but what do you think about Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn? Are those places appropriate for influencer marketing? What are your thoughts on those platforms in particular, and where they're going in terms of influencer marketing?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, so this is probably in what you said of this is probably the numbers that come in mind for me. So I would say out of those three, now this is my own personal opinion, so this is because I do a lot of stuff. Instagram is where I spend most of my time, and blogs I think is probably where we spend most of our time, or like content creation and stuff like that. In those situations, it really depends on the product or service, right? So when I give these answers, there's some products that would fit better other places. But I would say Twitter probably is the last, right? You can have a good following there. I have a good following on Twitter. But I don't do any like influencer marketing there, like through brands and stuff like that. Brands reach out to me. Facebook, I think, would be the next one, because Facebook really is mainly a place where you can put up great content, and then really if you're supposed to Facebook ads, is that way you open up the algorithm, right? So more people will see it. So I think that's a better way to do it, is actually have some kind of an ad platform, or spending money there to develop the content, let's say through Instagram, and taking that picture, assuming it makes sense because it's for the platforms, and then putting that on Facebook, and then putting some ad behind it or some money behind it, because you actually now can do a lookalike audience for Instagram and put it onto Facebook with that content. And then LinkedIn. I mean, LinkedIn makes sense more probably for a B2B play, but B2C makes some sense as well. You can be an influencer on LinkedIn. I mean, just really depends on what kind of content. I mean, I would think of myself somewhat as an influencer on LinkedIn, since that I put my content out there. I get, a few hundred people a day that look at my profile and look at my content. So that's where I'm kind of seen. And so in this situation, me being a company as a brand, then people would pitch me and say, hey, I want you to feature my software or my company, in one of your blog posts. That's more of like the B2B play that we kind of talked about a little earlier. So that's, for me, that's my general answers with that, because it's just not quite as popular. Really, the popular ones are going to be Instagram and YouTube is where we spend most of our time. Snapchat a little bit, and then it kind of goes down to Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, once again, can obviously have some benefits as well.
Very cool. Yeah, that's always been an interesting one, especially for us, because we get a lot of action and engagement on Twitter, and we drive a lot of traffic. So it's been a great for engagement and conversions. But it's always interesting to find out, what experts like yourself think of these different platforms. So that is it for the questions. Thank you everyone who submitted your questions, and if you have any other questions, we will be sending out a follow-up email with both the recording and the slides, and of course you can respond to that with your questions, or of course email Shane himself, and I'm sure he'd be happy to provide some resources. And just so everyone knows, if you are not a Green Rope user, my name's Alessandra. I'm a marketing manager here at Green Rope, and we are very, very thankful today for having you here, Shane. We really appreciate all your expert advice and insights on this really hot topic right now. And I really look forward to working with you more, and just learning more in terms of how to do our own influencer campaigns. And I think today has been a really valuable session. So again, for everyone attending, we will be sending out a follow-up email, and then we'll also be providing Shane's ebook as well, so that everyone can get a look at that and start, brainstorming and getting creative for their own influencer campaigns. So now I'm going to pass it back to you, Shane, if you have any last thoughts or any last words.
Yeah, no, I wanted to thank you guys once again for having this webinar today. I know, like you touched on, it is kind of a hot topic, and I'm here to I really want to kind of educate people, because if you do it the right way, there can be a lot of money that can be made, but if you don't do it the right way, there's some things that can happen that can really mess up your campaign. So if you have any questions, as you touched on, you can go to shane@shanebarker.com is my direct email, and then obviously grab the influencer book is always a good start. Read that, and if you guys have any questions. And also sign up for my newsletter. So if you go to my website, you'll see I have a newsletter that we send out stuff at least once or twice a week. Keep you up to date on other webinars I'm doing, speaking engagements. Like I'll be at Entreport at the beginning of this month. So anyways, a lot of good stuff going. So we're just, like I said, appreciate the opportunity. And once again, I hope everybody has an awesome day.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shane. And thank you everyone for attending as well. And yeah, look out for the email with the slides and the recording. And if you would like more information, just please reach out to us. We're happy to send over Shane's website and any other additional resources from him as well. And then we'll also be sharing, I know that Shane, you've got some upcoming workshops that you're working on, so we'll definitely want to share that. We'll be sharing that with everyone here as well.
Awesome.
All right. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone. And thanks again, Shane. We really appreciate it.
The pleasure was all mine.